Thank you everyone for joining us for Working Through It Wednesday, a webinar series made possible through the collaborative grant with the South Carolina Department of Education, Offices of Special Education Services, with the University of South Carolina Southeastern School Behavioral Health Community. I'm Erin Schroeder, and today I am here with Emmalee Bowlin, and we are going to talk about her wonderful nonprofit, Please Pass the Love. Before I get started, I'd love to introduce Emmalee. And just a reminder, as you can all see in the bottom right hand of our screen, is a quick survey at the end of this to just fill out and let us know what we're doing well and what we can do better to help outreach and serve our communities. So, that being said, I want to introduce the lovely Emmalee Bowlin. Emmalee has worked in the social services field for over 14 years and is a founding member of Please Pass the Love. She has a background in providing a wide variety of services, including case management, volunteer management, event planning, community outreach, curriculum development, youth programming, and nonprofit management. She's born and raised in Indianola, Iowa. Emmalee graduated from Simpson College in 2007 with degrees in sociology and criminal justice. Her career expands from working as a counselor with the homeless population in Jacksonville, Florida, to working in children's ministry in West Des Moines. Throughout her career, she has helped launch 3 successful nonprofits, has presented to thousands of students across the state, and has served on countless boards and coalitions to enrich the lives of Iowans who are struggling. Emmalee is very passionate about mental health and has dedicated her career to being a voice for those who don't always have one. She knows our state must do better and realizes the importance of getting more mental health supports in the schools. She'll continue to work mercilessly until that is accomplished. Emmalee sits on various boards and committees and is a dedicated member of her community. She works on a variety of projects for Please Pass the Love, including youth programming, community outreach and development, event planning, and fundraising. Emmalee lives in Indianola with her energetic and adoring son, Waylon. When they aren't spending time with family or traveling, they enjoy spending time outside, going to auctions, going antique shopping, and anything sports related. They enjoy staying active throughout the year with travel sports teams that Waylon's involved in. Emmalee, thank you so much for being here and welcome to Working Through It Wednesday.
Well, thanks for having us. What an opportunity to present, from halfway across the country, and I guess there are some good things that come out of COVID.
Right.
Yeah, thanks for having us. We're excited to be here today for sure.
Great.
All right, so am I good to go with doing my screen share and all that? Okay.
Please.
Well, let's get started then. Let me see. Technology.
Technology is wonderful.
All right.
It is not.
Yes, it is. So fingers crossed. Here's to hoping. Let's see if my PowerPoint, it did, it loaded. Okay. Let me move this though to the side so you can all see this. All right. So yeah, as Erin said, I'm with a nonprofit. We're based out of Des Moines, Iowa. It's called Please Pass the Love. We, just some guidelines for today. We always start all of our presentations with saying we're open-minded, we're very inclusive, and so to just always be kind to those around you and those that come from different backgrounds. And then that sensitivity statement, right? I'm going to talk about some statistics. I'm not going to dive too deep into a lot of them with this presentation, but we are going to mention suicide and mental health, and so we always like to put that trigger warning out there for folks. This we do in person, we'll have to skip today. So my story, and I'll dive into that and then kind of get started on what we do. So I got started with Please Pass the Love and was a founding member of it. As a social worker, mental health has always been a passion of mine. My son is going to be in 6th grade, and he allows for me to share a little bit of his story. He was diagnosed with ADHD when he was 5. And so that's something that we've always worked through and have struggled with at times. And now we're on a really great path and found the right medication that has helped tremendously. But, having that gives me a whole new perspective on things. I was a social worker long before he was diagnosed. And so I had been dealing with that and was familiar with that. But having a child and being a parent to someone who struggles with mental health puts you in a whole new realm of things. So it has added another layer into my passion, and And it's been great to be on that journey with him and help him through things. And he's doing great now. And I always try to teach him to talk about mental health, and so he's very open with talking about it. And it's, you know, it's a part of his life, and he knows that. And so I think the more we can break that stigma and the more we can start to talk about it, the more we can normalize it. And kids as young as my son can talk about it like they do any other medical thing. So who the heck are we? What's Please Pass to Love? We are a nonprofit. We started in 2014. Yes, so 2014, we became a 501c3. Our founding director, Jen, who's still our executive director, she was a career educator, and she realized that there was just this huge gap in mental health supports within our schools, right? We've got, we're lacking supports for our students. We're lacking supports for our educators. So how could we bridge that gap? Initially, we became a nonprofit to connect schools with the resources, to get the training for educators to start programs. And then we quickly realized that in Iowa, there just aren't a lot of resources. And so, so we became that. We became that resource. And one thing that we do is training educators in schools on like professional development days. We have an annual big Midwest School Mental Health Conference, which I'll talk about at the end of the presentation, and then a lot of youth programming, which I'll talk about as well. So we have grown tremendously. Our conference last year had close to 1,000 people in attendance. This year we were hoping to break that 1,000, and then COVID hit, and so we're just hoping to get a few hundred there, I think, at this point, and it'll be virtually held. So yeah, so that's kind of in a nutshell what we do. We're all about breaking that stigma attached to mental health. We've got these cool green shirts you can see in the picture. And all about, you know, making sure that schools embrace and sustain those mental health and wellness supports for their students, so that every school is an inclusive environment where students feel loved and supported and welcomed. So let's dive into that mental health piece. So what is mental illness? Well, it's a medical condition that disrupts a person's thinking, their feeling, their mood, their ability to kind of relate to others, and it can really have an impact on daily functioning, especially if it continues to go untreated. So again, I think that keyword is medical condition, right? Just like every other condition out there, we need to start viewing mental health like that. But it's treatable. So when I present to students, I will often ask everyone to, if you raise your hand, if you feel comfortable saying, I have a dentist appointment today. If you would stand up in front of the room and say, hey, Miss So-and-so, I have to leave for a dentist appointment, right? Everyone's hands go up. Well, then I say, raise your hand if, oh my goodness, I forgot to turn off my notifications, I'm so sorry. Raise your hand if you would feel comfortable saying, hey, Miss So-and-so, I have to go to my psychiatrist today or go to my therapist today. And we see the hands go down. And maybe once in a while, we've got a few hands that go up. So why is that? Why do we have such a disconnect? And why do we have such an embarrassing feeling when we have to go get treated for mental health? It's because of that stigma. And I can't tell you why we decided as society that mental health is a bad thing, but I can tell you that the more we talk about it, the more that stigma decreases. And if we can talk about it again and again and again, those hands are going to keep staying up because people will feel more comfortable knowing that it's just like every other medical condition. So let's talk about the numbers. 1 in 5 youth have a mental health diagnosis. 1 in 5. So the numbers are really, really high. Now, when we talk about that, what percentage of youth do we think don't receive the treatment for a mental health and a mental illness? 80%. So 8 out of 10 people do not get the help that they need. And there are a lot of different factors that come into play with that. There's the stigma attached to it, right? There's a big lack of resources. There are barriers to access. In Iowa, we have a lot of rural communities that don't have resources. Maybe you're in one county, clear in the northern part of the state, and the closest therapist is 2 counties away. That's big for students who don't have a car or a parent to take them. And so we can get more of those, you know, one solution we always like is If schools can get those in-school therapists there, that is going to be a really, really big help. 50% of people that have a mental illness have symptoms that start before they're age 14. So remember I said my son was diagnosed when he was 5. So those symptoms can start happening younger and younger, which is why it's really important to keep those conversations with parents, with teachers, even at the elementary level. We are seeing a lot more elementary schools that are reaching out to us now saying, hey, we need training. Like that's mental health isn't something that we ever really thought of before, is having to get training on at the elementary level, but now we're seeing it more and more. And with COVID hitting, we're going to continue to see that trend. And then I think this final stat that is the most important and eye-opening one is that suicide is the second leading cause of death for young people. So that's nationwide, but in Iowa, it's been the second leading cause for I don't know how long as I can remember, we've had that trend. And so I don't know the exact number of suicides they're predicting due to COVID, but I know it's a huge increase. And so we're going to have even more of an epidemic on our hands. But I think when I say suicide's the second leading cause of death, people kind of go, whoa, I had no idea. Sorry, my girl, little Kinley's in here with me. She's going to help me present today.
I'm sorry to help.
So again, I'll ask when I go and present, raise your hand if you've ever been to like a Relay for Life or a juvenile diabetes walk or some sort of, an event, a walk, a fundraiser for all of these other things, right? Everyone's been to something like that. Okay, again, raise your hand if you've been to a suicide awareness walk or a mental health awareness walk, and no one really has. But yet, suicide takes more lives than all those other things I just mentioned. Accidents is the only other, that's the first leading cause of death. So when we break it down like that, it really kind of opens the door to, oh yeah, I mean, if suicide's taking more lives than all these other things I support, why aren't we supporting more mental health? Why aren't we talking about it more? So let's dive into the how do you know, how well do you really know the students you're working with? Typically, I would have you break off into groups of 2 or 3 and discuss the followings. What are some struggles? Think about that kiddo in your classroom or maybe your own child that you just, it's like a constant battle. Let me tell you, folks, before my son got put on meds for ADHD, before I finally bit the bullet and said, okay, we're going to get him on some meds, it was almost an everyday battle and struggle. There were a lot of anger outbursts. There were a lot of not paying attention to what I'm saying, all these classic symptoms that just was such a struggle. And I had to really dig deep and say, how did I react? How could I have reacted differently? When I started to think about my reactions to him and started to think about the fact that he can't help a lot of what he's doing, that changed my whole perspective on things. So you have to really break that down. I know our initial reaction to those students that we really struggle with is initially just anger, right? Like, oh my gosh, how am I gonna get through? I can't do this. But when you start to dig deep and look beyond the surface, underneath that surface, like this iceberg, we can really start to see the bigger picture. Erin, are you able to see my whole screen, or can you see your face too? Like if I move it, is it in the way?
No, you can move us for sure.
Okay, there we go. Okay. So 10 steps to being a supportive adult. And I like gifts. So I have a lot of gifts sprinkled throughout my presentation. They bring me a lot of joy. And so how can we do that? So number 1, make sure you're that safe person. So we know a lot of students and a lot of young people, when they're struggling, they will say, there was a study, and I can't remember where it was out of, but they worked with suicide attempt survivors that were young people. And a lot of them said, if I had had one adult in my life that I could have gone to, that I could have talked to, and I knew they were a safe person, I don't think I would have attempted to take my life. So be that safe person, make it known. And there are a lot of ways you can do that, being an active listener. So don't just say, sure. I mean, you can, but make sure you're asking those questions and following up with them. If they came to you one day struggling, then a couple days later, check in with them. Like, make it a point to go out of your way to check in to see how they're doing. Point out the good they're doing. That's another thing that I found with my son. I had to point out the good, and we did a behavior chart based on all the awesome things he was doing, and that really helped. Hey, Miss Kinley, can you please come to your room? I'm so sorry.
That's totally fine. That's part of the working from home life. And
oh my goodness, the joys of working from home. The joys of working from home. I think everyone's probably experiencing this when they have kiddos.
Definitely.
Ask them what they need. How can I help you? You know, I'm going to use my son Waylon a lot throughout this because I lived it as a parent. You know, I lived it as a social worker, but as a parent, I have that better connection. I would often sit down, he was having a really bad day, and say, Waylon, how can I help you? What do you need right now to help get you through this? How can I help? And we would come up with a solution together. Don't be a therapist. I think it can be really hard to cross that line of being a therapist and being a friend or a safe person they can talk to. And so you need to be wary of that and know when it's time for them to reach out for professional help. Support without judging. Don't judge them. Have that open mind. If you're an educator, you are undoubtedly going to have students that come to you with some pretty tough, serious issues. You're not going to agree with all those issues, but you have to be supportive without judging them and set those boundaries. As a social worker, I've always had to be mindful of my boundaries. I used to have clients who would call me in the middle of the night if they somehow have my cell phone or they have the on-call phone, and so you have to be careful of setting those boundaries. Saying, yeah, we can talk, but here's when I'm available. If it's, you know, getting to the point of every day or multiple times a day, that's great. That means you're that awesome, safe adult they can talk to, but you have to be clear with those boundaries. Remind them they're not alone. Show them the statistics if you need to. Pull up the stats and say, hey, guess what? I know you probably think you might be the only one that struggles in your school with anxiety or depression, but these stats say otherwise. Like, I promise you, you are not alone. If you are someone who has struggled with it, I would highly encourage, if you feel comfortable, to share a little bit of your story too. Being aware again of those boundaries, but knowing that you're someone they can relate to because you've experienced some of the same things is going to be really big. Shared decision making. Again, when I ask my son, what do you need? How can we work through this together? Have that decision making be shared. And then taking care of yourself. Self-care is a huge, huge, huge part of anything. With educators, especially now this year, you are going to need to make sure you are on your game with self-care. And we'll go over some tips a little bit later. So the education and research that we use for our youth programming is Hart's Ladder, and that's here on the left-hand side of the screen. So we know a lot of schools when we ask students where they think their school falls on this ladder, the higher up the ladder, the more that young people in the school have a shared decision making, the more they feel like, yeah, my voice and my opinion in this school matters. The lower they are, they're a decoration, they're tokenized, they're manipulated. So when we ask students, where do you think your school falls? A lot of them will say, 4, maybe 3. Sometimes we get schools that are higher up on the ladder, and that is amazing because that's where we want schools to be. It doesn't mean that the students are the ones making all the decisions. It just means that their voice is brought to the table and actually listened to, and that they're a part of the solution, not a part of the problem. But how do you do that? It can be really hard to try to transform your school or your organization into making sure that youth voice is heard. So these are just some tips. I won't, read through all of them, but making sure that you're honoring them and asking them. If you have the ability to create a youth advisory board, I couldn't recommend that higher. We started one last year. We just picked our new board for this year, and they give us feedback on our youth programming. They're going to help us develop some curriculum this year for our youth programming, and giving them that voice and that space to really shine can be monumental. We see students that tell us for the first time ever, I feel like I actually matter and that my opinion counts, and that I can actually be myself. And so providing ample opportunities for them to get involved is really, really good. Number 3, I really like, because you have to understand that youth voice is a part of your organization. It's a way of operating. It can be a part of your culture. Don't just have one leadership program. That's great if you do, but make sure it's kind of weaved throughout everything else. when we have presentations and conferences. So at our conference in August in a couple of weeks, we're going to have a few different youth panels presenting of youth that we work with. They're going to be presenting to hundreds of educators from across the country, and that's really giving them that space to build their leadership skills. And so the other ones really are just kind of talking about, you know, again, with the active listening, going beyond just listening, and understanding that there are positive outcomes when you have young people and adults working together. Things can really be amazing, and you can have some really great outcomes for that. So I would have you talk amongst yourselves, but maybe if you have a pen and paper or your phone, just jot down some ways that you can be bringing youth voice to the table. These are some good examples of how you can do that. So one school we worked with, the students said that their school got, I don't know if they got a grant or they had some money in the budget that they were able to like float around and do something with. And they sent a survey out to all the adults that said, what should we do with this money? They didn't include the students on any of these decisions. And they ended up like resurfacing the football field or something like that. And the students, majority of them that we presented to said, our desks are falling apart. We have bad technology, like half the iPads aren't working. I really wish that that survey would have been sent to us, because we didn't need, you know, as students, we didn't think we needed a football field resurfaced, but I'd like a desk that's maybe not jabbing into my side when I sit in it because it's broken. And so that, you know, bringing that would have made a huge impact. Even if they didn't go with that, they at least brought the students' voice to that table to make sure that they were a part of that decision. Bringing in youth speakers. So is there an opportunity for you to bring in young people to speak to the students in your school or in your community? Again, we have our youth that present with us quite often when we go to schools and when we present at different conferences. And I could talk all day, and adults listen. You know, when you've got a young person up there sharing their story, everyone kind of tunes right into them. I could share my story again all day, every day, but when it's a young person, it has a different feeling to it, and it makes more of an impact. Let them plan some events. So, you know, maybe you'll have a mental health awareness night or an event during the day at school. Let the youth be in charge of planning that. Create a youth advisory group. Again, invite them to come to school leadership meetings. So with our board of directors, we have 2 youth representatives that sit on that too. Do you have youth representation that attend your school board meetings? Do you have student council members maybe that attend them, or your school leadership meetings? If not, why? Is it possible to do that? Could you bring them in to get that youth voice and kind of get the representation of the student body for that? Making sure that marginalized students are part of the conversation is really, really big too. Reach out and specifically seek those students. You might think that the shy, quiet, reserved student is probably not good for a leadership position. They might be the best ones for that. They've just never been given that space or opportunity to do that. And then make it fun. You know, they're young people, so they want to have fun. So are there events that they can get involved with at the school that they can be planning? That kind of goes with letting them plan the mental health awareness night. But yeah, I mean, those are just really great ways, and this is recorded, so you can pause it, so you can take down all those ways. So when we ask young people, what do I wish adults knew about me? I do this at almost every single presentation we do with students, and the answers we get, some of them are funny, like some of them you're just like, okay, you clearly don't care. But some of them can be really kind of like gut-wrenching, and that's, as an adult, that's a punch in the gut that I haven't ever thought of that. So here are just a few of them. School is extremely stressful, and the education system needs to be changed. I typed that out twice. Pronouns are important. Please use the correct ones. And if you do not know, then please ask me. That is so important. Times are changing, right? Just like this one in the corner says, times are changing. We don't have the same issues. Doesn't mean they're meaningless. Pronouns were not a thing really when I was in school, when my parents were in school, that we didn't talk about pronouns. But now that is a part of the culture, and we need to be respecting that. I'm very uncomfortable in social situations. Teenagers aren't lazy. We just have crippling mental health. I wish adults knew what it's like to be mentally ill in the public school system. That one, for me, really hit home because I've seen firsthand as a parent and as someone who works in the field, that it's not always the best and it's not always super supportive. And I don't think that's any fault to the schools or to the teachers, to the educators, to the administrators. I think it's just an issue that hasn't been put on the table up until now. And so we're just kind of starting to really dive deep into that. So what would you say? So think about, you know, what are some of your responses going to be to some of those? Knowing that a lot of those answers, and I'll go back to that, a lot of these are very common when we ask all the students. So you see this, what are you going to do with it as an adult? How can you help students who are saying these things that come into your classrooms? Teens are stressed. When we ask them what they're stressed with, here's the thing. Here's everything they say, and then more that I didn't have enough room on this slideshow to put. So how many times do we ask a sophomore or junior, what are your plans after school? What are you going to do when you graduate? Where are you going to go to school? What are you going to do for a living? Well, what's your career going to be? You're not going to go to school. What are you going to do? How are you going to make a living? I mean, I've done it. I'm guilty. And that's, you know, I try to be more aware of not doing that now. But when I ask that question to students, it's like immediate stress comes to their face. They're like, oh my gosh, I get asked that all the time and I don't know. I'm only 17. How am I supposed to know what I want to do for the rest of my life? And then the homework, you know, a lot of them say, well, the teachers say it's only an hour or 30 minutes of homework from my class. Well, yeah, you take that and multiply it times all the classes they have. Plus, if they're involved in any extracurriculars or sports, they're up until 1, 2 in the morning sometimes doing homework every single night, and then expected to be fully aware and awake all day at school. So we need to stop and think about all the stresses that teenagers are under. Social media is another huge thing that they stress out about. I am so thankful that social media wasn't a thing when I was in high school, and when I was graduating college, it was just starting to become something. High schoolers don't have a fully developed brain. So you all know that some of the things that they're putting on social media probably aren't great, but again, there's not that fully developed brain. And if I think back to when I was in high school, some of the dumb things I did, those weren't blasted all over the internet for people to see, and I am grateful every single day. But along with social media comes the bullying, the need to feel like you have to compare yourself to everyone all the time. So I always encourage students to take a social media break too. They kind of gasp, but then they realize like, oh, you know what? That actually might not be a bad idea. And there's a lot of really great YouTube videos out there of young people who gave up social media for a couple weeks, and they talk about how it made them feel. So I would encourage you to go check that out. How am I doing on time, Erin? And am I done?
You get all the time you want.
Oh gosh, I'm sorry.
Great. No,
well, I want to show this video. It's called, so there's a really amazing organization in Des Moines called Run DSM, or Movement 515. It's through the Des Moines Public School System. And they are all about youth voice. Like when I tell you this nonprofit has got it going on, it really does. They are so amazing at what they do. One of the biggest pieces they do is that slam poetry. And so this is their Teen Summit Showcase in 2018. And I am just going to play this. Let me open it up. There's probably going to be an ad because, you know, why not?
Suicide isn't funny. Depression isn't funny. And this poem isn't funny. This poem is about days where I can't even force myself out of bed. Like I'm a prisoner to these sheets. This poem is about nights where I can't sleep. My depression has held me hostage for years now. Left me stranded, wondering how did I end up in a world that won't accept me? A world where it's okay to mock suicide and depression. A world where mental illness is treated as a crime. My story isn't too sad or too scary. My story is the truth about how the world thinks depression depression is something to laugh at and push aside, how the world thinks suicide is an easy way out of life problems, do you want to know what my problem is? My problem is people who don't care about my situation, people who decide how I should live my life, people who couldn't even bear to live my life, people who think that my condition is some kind of joke. My life isn't some kind of comedy club where you hear laughter every minute. Sometimes I can't even bring myself to laugh or to even smile. Depression isn't all fun and games. It's like being chained to your bed, not being able to move. It's like having to force yourself to think or even breathe. It's 2018 and we still haven't talked about mental illness yet. We let YouTubers force our youth into thinking it's okay to make a joke out of suicide. Dear Logan Paul and everyone else who takes suicide, mental health and depression lightly, you make me sick. Not the kind of sick that you think mental illness is, the kind that makes your stomach turn and your body ache. You made me realize why I became an activist. Black Power Fist, sign up, marching justice for the people. You made me realize why this needs to be talked about. Why are people so scared to talk about mental health? Why do we continue to teach our children that having a mental illness is bad? Like I can help the fact that I have depression, so here I am. Here to bring up the forbidden topic, ready to teach you why you shouldn't laugh and say things about mental illness and suicide. Why can't the world just stop and think about their actions? Does it really take a song to help you realize that this world has a problem? Why does the world need 13 reasons why we should care about mental illness and suicide? Why can't we just put mental health first? Why are we forced to stay silent about suicide and mental illness? It's 2018 and I'm choosing to talk about suicide, mental health, and depression.
So I would encourage you, if you have time, to go to YouTube and look them up. It's you can see it's called Run DSM is their page. They've got some younger kiddos that are out there doing their thing, and they're amazing to watch. They're so great. Okay, let me figure out. I don't know how to get back out. Here we go. There we go. Okay.
That was wonderful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. I could watch slam poetry all day, and I will say, some of them use some curse words in there. When they're really getting into it, they're just so phenomenal. I could spend hours and hours watching slam poetry. I love it so much. So, I just want to end this with self-care and coping skills. If you haven't already built that into a part of your classroom with teaching self-care and those healthy coping skills, I strongly encourage you. As educators going back this year, this is a school year we've never seen before, and we might be able to get started and then things might shut back down. I don't think anyone knows how it's going to look. So when I say your self-care as an educator is going to be more important than ever, take that to heart. It is very, very important for you to be practicing that self-care and making it a part of your routine. So just some examples. Journaling. I like to journal. I've started a bullet journal probably 5 times in the last 2 years, and I always stop it. But it always helps me feel better. Art. I'm not good at art, but I enjoy going to those wine and paint classes. But eating that, throwing a Richard Simmons video, working out, getting those endorphins going out and getting in the sun. Saying no to unrealistic face filters. So again, back to that social media part. If you haven't ever taken a break from social media, I can't recommend it enough. I had to take a break a couple months ago for a couple weeks. It doesn't have to be long, but anytime you can refreshes you. So I highly encourage it. And then a therapist. I love this gift. Once again, I warned you that there would be lots of gifts in my presentation. What if everyone had a therapist? I always say, a therapist needs a therapist. It's not a bad thing to go and have to talk to someone and get that unbiased opinion. And really, at the end of the day, if you can just talk to someone and vent to them, how amazing is that you get an hour to just vent and unload everything that's weighing you down, and they're not going to judge you, and they're going to be there for you and help you work through some of that. So talk about it, normalize it. Talk to your students, try to normalize that conversation, because the more we talk about it, the more that stigma detaches itself and we can get the resources we need to these students. Breathing exercises, if you haven't incorporated any mindfulness or brain breaks throughout the day, this would be a really good year to start that. So maybe in your classroom, incorporate a 1 or 2 minute brain break and have the kids do an exercise like this where you inhale and exhale. There are a lot of really, really great, phenomenal apps out there on your phones that are free. So feel free to research and download those. And just remember, at the end of the day, you can be that hope and that supportive adult that a young person needs. It doesn't take an act of God. It doesn't have to be difficult to do, but know that you can be the person that could inevitably save a life. If a young person who's struggling knows that you are that adult they can go to, you could be the game changer for them. Kid President, this is another video I won't show, but you all probably know Kid President. He's amazing. This is a really great video, 20 things we should say more often. So that would be good. This is the Iowa crisis chat line stuff because we just do our presentations in Iowa when I do them. But if you don't have your I don't know if you, South Carolina, if you have a local crisis chat, I'm sure you do, or there's a national one, have those signs posted all over, have them on your phone. This app right here is called A Friend Asks, and it's through the Jason Foundation, and you can click on all those little buttons, how to help a friend, warning signs to look for. That's a really great app to have in your phone because while you might not need it, with 1 in 5 students struggling, you really might encounter a student who's going to need that help. So you're going to need to have that on your phone or somewhere where you can have quick access to it. And then just some upcoming events with us. So we've got our Midwest School Mental Health Conference. That's August 5th through the 7th. It's only $100. It's virtual. So if you haven't registered for it or looked up the information, I highly encourage it. One of our keynote speakers is Dr. Isaiah Pickens. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with him. He was the keynote at the National School Mental Health Conference in November, and he is a co-director, I believe, with the UCLA Duke National Center for Childhood Trauma. So it's going to be really great. He's also doing an additional trauma workshop. So our conference and the workshop are, you can get CEU credit hours for that. The conference will be in the mornings, those 3 days, and then the workshop will be in the afternoons on the 6th and 7th. That's an additional cost, but you can find all that information on our website, which is over on the left-hand side. And these are all of our social media things. I would highly encourage you to join us in that. And if you can join us for the conference, that would be awesome. A new thing that we're doing since COVID hit is we have started doing virtual self-care for teens workshops. They're all free. So if you have any groups of students, or maybe when school starts back, if you want to do a Zoom self-care workshop, we would love to partner with you on that. Again, they're all free. There's no cost. We do a lot of interactive activities because we can't stress enough how important self-care is in general, but how much more important it's going to be when school starts back up after students being gone for so long, and there's just still a lot of unknowns. So feel free to reach out. You've got our information. If you're interested in doing a self-care workshop, we would love to work with your school or your organization or your group of teens. So feel free to reach out. I'm going to put this back and end on that screen, but that's all I have. I'll do my stop share, and there you go.
Thank you, Emmalee. That was amazing.
Yes, I went over the 30 minutes. I'm so sorry.
You know what? We needed it. We needed more information, and I really appreciate you doing it because everything that you shared was so relevant, and thank you. Thank you for reminding us that mental health is so important, and destigmatizing mental health can just be the piece that begins to help any student, and you can be that crossover, that caring adult that can help by just being a friend, being a kind person, and showing that you care. So thank you for reminding us of that and giving us more resources and being a partner all the way from Iowa.
Yes, well, thank you. We're certainly happy to have you all as partners, and we cherish the work you guys do as well. So thank you so much for having me today. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you. From everyone with the Behavioral Alliance of South Carolina, thanks for joining us for Working Through It Wednesday with Emmalee Bowlin, and please pass the love. Please don't forget to take our quick survey here. The QR code is attached to this slide as well as linked in the description. Thank you all so much and have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks.
Bye.